Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. In this video I want to talk about the Bretzel 2.0. It's a movement that I have begun to again ask some of you to get into. For a number of years I used it quite frequently myself and with other athletes, and then it kind of fell out of favor a little bit for a few reasons. Experimenting with some other things, but I think it's a really tremendous movement stretch, and I think it's valuable for everybody. And now with what we're doing with Pales Rails, we can bring an additional element into play. So what's special about the Bretzel 2.0? We know that all of the connective tissue in our body, and in fact all of the tissue in our body, is all layered in a three-dimensional spiral form. In fact, every cell in our body takes on a little bit of a three-dimensional spiral form. So as we start to get into some stretching exercises which are really holistic in nature, we want to bring in that three-dimensional spiral element. And you know, any of you folks that I've been working with for a few years have seen how many of the stretching exercises or movements that we focused on that at one time were somewhat two-dimensional or sagittal plane have taken on more of a spiral nature. The key element with Bretzel 2.0 is it takes this 90-90 position, which is tremendous for our hips. This is where we all start in that gait analysis. This is a great position to get into, and I'm feeling pretty tight right now, pretty restricted. This is a great movement for me. This side a little bit more restricted, but if you want to do one thing that's valuable for yourself, and Terry will tell you I do this nightly, is get down on the floor and just move through this 90-90, and you know, basically center everything around the hips and see if you can get your hips moving, if you can lift your chest. Of course, engage that core. And the nature or definition of 90-90, what we're looking at here is the angle of the knee. So we want about a 90-degree angle. Sometimes folks will do this stretch in this position, and this is fine, except it's not nearly as challenging for the hips. So we're not asking the hips to open in quite the same way. And I think many of you that have seen some of the Core 4 stuff that Stretch to Win, fascial stretch therapy folks have done, where we're sort of focusing here and then focusing over here and rotating over that side. I'll often grip my legs and work through this position. So what am I trying to do here? I'm actually hinging at the hip as I come forward, trying to lengthen my spine and lift my chest, and just see if I can get into that and then pry a little bit in that position. So Bretzel 2.0 starts here, but then it adds an incredible element, and that element is the rotational nature to our thoracic spine, the motion which is inherent in our thoracic spine. And when we look at the spine, just to quickly review, we know we've basically got three portions to it, right? The upper portion is that cervical spine or our neck, that middle portion is that thoracic spine, and then the lower portion is our lumbar spine. Generally, the stability that we're working on is to keep that lumbar spine or low back stable. That's what's rooted into our pelvis, and that's our foundation. Of course, we know that the lumbar spine can move. Every one of those vertebrae, those 5 vertebrae that are part of that lumbar spine, can move in the same way that the 12 vertebrae that are part of the thoracic spine can move. But when we look at optimal movement, we want that lumbar spine to be a little bit more stable, and we want to generate more of the motion, specifically rotational motion or movement from this thoracic spine. So if I spin around and kind of look at what we're doing with Bretzel 2.0, and then I'm going to basically go through a checklist of all of the things that I think about as I'm doing this movement. By the way, just a little bit of trivia. Where did the name Bretzel 2.0 come from? There's actually 2 Bretzel movements or stretching exercises in the site. They both come from Gray Cook, and they're named in honor of Gray's partner in crime in much of the work that he's done with Dragon Door and with Get Strong First, Brett Jones. Brett is actually one of the renowned experts in the kettlebell world. He's the guy that I actually did my HKC with. And so Brett and Gray have done a lot of work together, and Gray felt Brett needed a little work in this area. They came up with this movement and he called it the Bretzel. So that's where it comes from. All right, so we know with Bretzel 2.0, we want to post our hands first, but let's just step back and let's just double check this 90-90 position. Again, 90 degrees at the knees. I'm also looking for about a 90-degree relationship between my thighs. One of the things that can happen in this movement that we want to avoid is that the thighs can come together or the knees can flex a little bit more and come together as well too. So what I'm trying to do throughout the course of this movement is continue to try to open my hips as much as possible. In other words, open and mobile hips that are grounded onto the floor with a stable core is the foundation for everything else that I do all the way through the upper portion of my body with this movement, okay? Let me say that again. Everything that I'm doing with my lower body, maintaining good 90-degree angles, rooting my legs to the floor as much as possible, and constantly working. So you can see here, I mean, I can set up in this position, but I can also walk my feet out and try to open up my hips there. And that's exactly what I'm going to try to do in this exercise, is continue to try to keep my hips open as much as possible. Keep my core engaged. That's my foundation. All the motion that I want to, try to generate as I rotate through my thoracic spine, I want it to first come from my hips, not from my low back. So keeping my core engaged and keeping my legs rooted to the floor, similar to how I might do this if I was doing some kind of pails rails. That's absolutely a critical part of it. So I'm going to go ahead and, with those things in mind, go ahead and post my arms. Now, as you know, I want my hands to be in an imaginary straight line between them that's parallel to my thigh. That's how we set this exercise up. Sometimes I see folks setting up their hands quite a bit of a distance from the thigh, and that's generally not, I don't think, optimal for this. Try to bring your hands in a little closer to your thigh. For me, 6 or 8 inches is fine. And again, what am I doing here? I'm thinking about lifting my chest, lengthening my spine, keeping my core engaged, and keeping this leg, this hip, everything connected and engaged. So as I rotate my trunk around to the left, it'd be very easy for this thigh to follow, right? And that's not what I want to happen. I want to keep this thigh rooted and grounded, because as I generate rotation, that spinal rotation from my thoracic spine, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get this baby to move. Listen, we all know that motion's going to happen in the human body. When we're out running, when we're swimming, when we're cycling, when we're playing on a field, whatever, soccer, any kind of human activity that involves dynamic movement, motion is going to happen. The reason why a lot of us get injured is because the motion's coming from the wrong place. So your body, if it doesn't get motion from the thoracic spine, is going to borrow it from the low back, and low back pain or soreness can be the end result of that. And naturally, we know all about how if the hips are not moving, the low back will pay the price. You're just like yawning away back there. I hope everyone else isn't yawning while they're watching. Okay. All right, back to what we're doing. So, check the boxes here. I'm going to post my hands, lengthen my spine, keep my core engaged, keep walking that leg back to ensure that I've got everything grounded. And at this point, I'm going to try to engage my back too, pinch those shoulder blades together so that I can provide support for this shoulder, because obviously it's this arm that I'm going to be moving through, and this is certainly where the greatest amount of pressure is. Now, for many of you, this position is the most challenging. Just getting into this position can be challenging. And the important thing to remember is it's a moving target. Like some days I have difficulty getting into this position, and other days I can get into it fairly easily. And if I've spent some time moving, stretching, especially through 90-90, maybe done some pails rails, then coming into this position is much easier. If I've done some thoracic spine mobilization with my P-knot or with a foam roller, and I've started to get that spine to move a little bit, right? Then I can come into this position. It'll feel a little bit easier. So it's a moving target, folks, always and forever. Always and forever a moving target. We want to take wherever we are on the day and just work with whatever we have, making sure that we can check the boxes as we go. Okay? So in this position, notice I'm not way out here where, by the way, I've taken all the pressure off my shoulders, and now I'm not looking and getting that same kind of engagement that I'm looking for through my trunk. So I'm going to come in a little sooner, checking that box to make sure that these are parallel, walking that back leg back. I want to keep these legs grounded. As soon as they start to elevate, I've lost control of the movement. So as I start to go into the motion, keeping these grounded and in position, keeping my core engaged is critical, right? So with all that being said, spend time here. Spend time in this position if this is what it takes. Breathe, engage everything, and feel that spiral nature. I mean, you can see it. I'm sure you're looking at the video, maybe looking at the pictures. You can see my body's in a very natural and normal, very spiral arrangement by being in this position. All right. Now, as I said, we want all of the lower body motion to come predominantly from the hips, all of the upper body motion to come predominantly from the thoracic spine. So as I go ahead and place that hand underneath my right hand underneath the heel of my left, two things are happening here. One, because I've now moved my right arm to my left, this is bringing my trunk, my upper body, to the left, and I'm continuing to feed into that spiral rotation to the left, and that's going to be a limitation. So I want to help myself as much as possible. Again, engage my core, lift my chest, and feed into that rotation as much as I possibly can. Excellent. Now, I can walk this hand in one direction or another. If I want to make it a little easier, I could go this way. If I want to make it a little harder, I could go this way. So be willing to change your position, adjust as you go, and remember, keep walking this leg out, keep walking this leg out, keep these things open as much as possible. All right, so what's the next step? Hinging at the hip. And what's the cue here? I got to keep my left elbow straight, no cheating. As soon as that left elbow starts to bend, it's game over. That's as far as you can go. That's the limitation that you have at that moment in time. So you work with it, and you try to get a little bit further each time. The other thing that we really want to do, and this comes again into something that relates in a little bit to our cars and our pails rails, is control of the movement. So I'm just, let's say I have a tremendous amount of thoracic spine mobility, which I don't have. In fact, that's one of my greatest limitations. Let's say I also have a tremendous amount of hip mobility, and it's really easy for me to go straight to the floor, which it's not, but let's say it was. The goal is not just the passive flexibility required to get to the floor. The goal is controlling that movement. So I'm going, no matter how far I can go today, I'm going to stop short of the floor. I'm not going to let myself relax on the floor. I'm not looking for the passive flexibility element. I'm looking for control of the movement. Okay? So again, I've set everything up. I'm going to keep my core engaged, hinge at the hip, and let myself come down. All right. Let's make sure I got myself set up correctly here. Actually spin this way a little bit. All right. And then down we go. Keep walking that right leg back. Keep everything grounded. That looks like that's about what I've got today. I may be able to go a little bit further. tendency for the elbow to want to bend. Pushing myself out and staying, keeping in control. So, and then of course, I come over and do the same thing on the other side. So this is looking at our ability to just take that core foundational 90-90 position and then introduce a nice level of thoracic rotation and external rotation of the hip too, all the way through. So, all right, I hope that helps. Like I said, a moving target. For me, some days I can get to the floor pretty easily, other days not so much. Terry and I just spent a couple of hours in the chair doing cello bowings, right? And violin. So,
which is why I'm tired.
right, which is why you're tired. So, too much time in the chair today. All right, I hope that helps. Please post any questions you have.